I call the Minister to move the motion to disagree with Lord's Amendment 1.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that this House disagrees with Lord's Amendment 1. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, this House sent the Second Chamber a bill that had a simple and direct objective outlined in this government's manifesto. And I have to say and report to the House that something very strange has happened since then. People said that since the general election the Conservative Party was in some sort of hibernation, but it would appear that they found an issue that's awakened them from their slumber. On the order of their whips, some hundreds of Conservative politicians finally mustering up the strength to make their mark in Parliament, ready to take action for what the 2025 Conservative Party believes in. They found their crusade. What is it? Keeping hereditary lords in their jobs, accessed by accident of birth. And I have to say, it is a tale as old as time, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Tories blocking progress. Who knew it? I will give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way. It was an opportune a moment for me to talk about my summer reading list of the first Labour government in 1924. Even at that time, there was talks about the reform of the House of Lords. So this is very much a tale as old as time itself. And in fact, looking back at historical hindsight, it goes much further back than 1924. So isn't it good that this Labour government is finally getting on with dealing with this issue?
Yeah. Honourable friend is absolutely right. And whether you go back to 1924 or even further back, and I will in the course of my speech, Conservatives in this House protecting their friends born into positions of power. And it is this bill that will finally remove such an archaic right. And just like the member for Clacton, he's overseas at the moment, so I understand, wants to send people, certainly in Wales, back down the coal mines, the Leader of the Opposition is also stuck in the politics of the past. And before, Madam Deputy Speaker, I turn specifically to the amendment sent back from the other place, I do want to draw attention to some comments made by the noble Lord Strathclyde, who said of this bill, and I directly quote, "Inevitably, there will be repercussions. They, in other words, the government, are storing up huge problems for themselves. Because not only has it been a complaint that the government is removing hereditary peers whilst offering, and I quote, nothing in return, more sinister than that, they have threatened using delaying tactics on this government's agenda. And you only have to look at the debates and behaviour of the party opposite in the upper house, trying to hold the government hostage on the football governance bill, the employment rights bill, the renters' rights bill, all to protect the hereditary principle. Now, we know that the Conservative Party is in no fit state to take action on very much. But at present, where is their energy being directed? It is in the action of self-preservation of hereditary peers in the House of Lords. It's unacceptable and, frankly, deserves to be highlighted. Now, I say, Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill has returned to the House amended by the other place. The majority of the amendments serve to undermine the core purpose of the bill or go well beyond the bill's intended remit. Let me just start with Amendment 1. It has to be read with its consequential Amendment 8. It seeks to end the system of hereditary peer by-elections whilst retaining the current cohort of hereditary peers. The government cannot endorse those amendments. They fundamentally undermine the core purpose of the bill. And the government has a manifesto commitment to bring about an immediate reform by removing the right of hereditary peers to sit and vote in the House of Lords. One moment. This amendment would allow existing hereditary peers, the youngest of whom is 39, to remain in the other place for decades to come. That, therefore, blocks an immediate reform. And I'll, of course, give way to the Honourable Member for Bridgewater.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way. He will be aware that the reasons that hereditaries still sit in the House of Lords is a deal done in 1999. And the promise made by the Labour government was the hereditaries would remain until the House of Lords was properly reformed. And the Minister is aware that he's removing the hereditaries, but giving no assurance as to when full reform of the House of Lords is going to take place. What assurance can he give this chamber as to when the government will give proper proposals to reform the upper chamber?
Immediately that this bill is on the statute book, as the leader of the House of Lords has set out in the other place, there will be created a select committee to look at those issues of retirement and participation. And let me just say to, let me say to the Honourable Gentleman is talking about the politics as they stood in 1999. This government was elected on a manifesto that delivered 411 MPs in 2024, and it's that manifesto that this government is following. And I have to say, I will give way in a moment. I'll make a point, and I will come to both honourable gentlemen opposite. But look, across both this House and the other place, there has been a broad consensus that the hereditary route to the House of Lords should end. And I have to say as well, and I do make clear, that we at this dispatch box, this government, and indeed Labour peers in the other place, have made clear it is not a judgment on individuals. It is not a judgment on the work and contribution of individual hereditary peers. It is a judgment on the principle. And let me just say to the House as well, there is no barrier, if there are hereditary peers who were, whether it is in the case of the party opposite, it was obviously be through a party list, there is no barrier to them being nominated as life peers, should, for example, the leader of the opposition wish to do so. And on that note, I'll give way to the Honourable Member for North Dorset, and I'll come to the Honourable Gentleman.
Grateful to the right honourable gentleman for giving way. His honourable friend earlier mentioned the very long period of time that his party has been anxious for and agitating about reform of the House of Lords. Is the creation of a future select committee really the sum of all of that anger and agitation? We could have seen, as my honourable friend for Bridgewater has mentioned, a full picture here, a full picture of a modernised, reformed, accountable House of Lords that works to deliver bicameral scrutiny. We haven't got that. The Minister is asking us to vest hope in the creation of a select committee with no time frame attached to when it could report and no promise of future legislation. He surely must be as disappointed and unhappy with that situation as I am.
Well, it's great to see that the Honourable Gentleman is disappointed that House of Lords reform isn't going far enough. If he wants to talk about the 20th century and the length of time that his party had been in power in that century, with every opportunity to bring about full reform of the House of Lords, not only did they bring about, at best, minimal reform, funnily enough, they blocked every attempt at major reform. So it's quite difficult to take their 2025 position very seriously at all. And the point about the Select Committee mentioned by the Honourable Gentleman is we've had, on the one hand, accusations that the government is acting in a party political way. On the other, asking the government to do things across party. That is precisely what that select committee will do. It will give the opportunity to look at issues like retirement age and participation. And the debate in the upper house, right across different parties actually, was covering those matters. And that select committee will be established within 3 months following the royal assent of the bill. And I can also say, just because the honourable gentleman was asking about deadline, that the committee will issue its findings by next summer. Now, I will give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way. I have to say, I for one, am perplexed. We've heard members of the opposition wish for us to go faster and further in reforming the House of Lords. We've heard members of the opposition chuntering about the divine right of whoever and whatever in the House of Lords. Does the Minister not agree that we seem to have a rather confused position from the opposition on this, and perhaps that sounds as testament to the leader of the opposition's ability to lead her own party?
I think the word confused just about sums up the opposition, whether it's on this particular bill or indeed any other. Now, we have... I will give way and then I'll make some progress.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way, and I'm not purporting to speak on behalf of my party, but rather as an individual who's long had an interest in the positive role that the Lords play in revising legislation, which any elected and strongly whipped House would not be able to do. But he partly anticipated the point I want to make when he said about the ability to appoint some of what would otherwise be outgoing hereditary peers to life peerages. And this may be a way forward for people of goodwill to pursue. But given the quite high number of people who find themselves in quite responsible positions in the Lords, what sort of numbers does he have in mind allowing the parties that are going to lose a large number of hereditary peers to be appointed as life peers?
Well, the honourable gentleman who always gives an individual contribution to his great credit, I should say, not just in this debate, but in a number of others as well. Well, no, I will not be drawn on numbers, which are always a matter for the Prime Minister and the usual channels, of course. But as in every Parliament, the Leader of the Opposition, whoever, of whatever party, will have the opportunity to nominate, and I would... and I'm sure he will make... I will give way back to him. I'm sure he would make a persuasive case to her about some members of the upper house.
I don't obviously expect him to be specific about numbers, but can he at least tell the House whether he accepts the principle that there would need to be a considerably larger one-off tranche to cater for this unique situation?
Yeah.
There will be the usual periods through this Parliament when there will be an opportunity. And as I repeat, there is no barrier to someone who serves as a hereditary peer being appointed as a life peer. But let me just make... I'll give way once more and I'll make some progress.
Thank you for giving way. Members on the opposite side of the House seem to want lots of reassurances for the people who feel they are born to rule. Yes. Will the Minister please tell me what reassurances this government is giving my constituents, my young people in Kinston and West Howe, that they will have equal right to be part of this legislative house?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. My honourable friend speaks very powerfully about her constituents. I want my constituents in Blenavon, Pontypool and Cwmbran to be able to say they can aspire to be members of Parliament and indeed members of the upper house. And they are not reserved for people. There are not reserved for people places by accident of birth. I mean, the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy chunters from a sedentary position. If he is in favour of the hereditary position, let him tell us, instead of hiding behind a smokescreen of pretending he's in favour of full reform. Let's hear him get to the dispatch box and say that he believes in the hereditary principle if that's what he does. Now, we have stated, Madam Deputy Speaker, from the outset, that we wanted this bill on the statute book before turning to the next phase of reform. Delaying this legislation means delaying the establishment of the Select Committee. It means delaying further reforms. Because the reality is, as my honourable friend mentioned in the first intervention, since we last reformed the Lords, the outside world has changed. Our Parliament should always be a place where talents are recognised and merit counts. It should never be a gallery of old boys' networks. It should never be a place where titles, many of which were handed out centuries ago, hold veto power over the will of the people. Thank you.
Would the Minister not recognise the irony of the fact that when these issues were discussed in 1924 compared to 2024, we're probably discussing the hereditary peers who are the grandchildren of the hereditary peers we were talking about getting rid of 100 years ago?
Yes, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and you would think, wouldn't you, that the 1924 debate about bloodlines and pedigree as a basis for participation would no longer have any advocates, but it appears there are a number of advocates that are left here a century later. And from the Parliament Acts, and indeed the Parliament Act of 1911 to the House of Lords Act of 1999, the history of Lords reform is littered with examples of individual members straining every sinew, using every different argument to try to resist reform. The late noble Lord Curzon in 1911 coined the term the ditchers, the unionist peers who were to fight into the last ditch over the then Parliament bill, and whose efforts have always acted as an effective block on further change. Today's ditchers all sit there on the benches opposite. On the point about hearing from one of the 2025 ditchers, absolutely.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I guarantee to him, as a council estate boy from Lewisham, I am not someone that ever thought that my bloodline would go into the House of Lords. But can I just challenge him on some of the on some of the points that he's made about his provisions going forward? Can I ask him? He's got a majority of 170. We know that his party won the election. Why, therefore, is he coming here and saying that we're trying to block reform and not want reform, which is completely untrue? But his government are such lacking in ambition that he doesn't have the courage or the political will to bring a full package of reform to this House, which this side of the House might well support. What we're saying to him might well support. What we're saying to him is, why is he coming here and tinkering at the edges and then attacking us for not being in favour of reform when he's refused to bring reform in the first place?
Well, first of all, in respect of his bloodline getting to the House of Lords, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we see that. But in terms of the antics of the party opposite, I don't know whether the Conservative Parliamentary Party here in the Commons even speaks to Conservative peers, but should go and speak to them about their behaviour on the hereditary peers bill, but also the other bills where they have been blocking. That's exactly what has been happening. And I have to say, I understand that the Leader of the Opposition is apparently spending time coming up with credible policies. Nobody is going to believe the Conservative Party is in favour of wholesale reform of the House of Lords. Now, it's been more than 25 years since Parliament agreed to end the hereditary route, and it was a temporary arrangement to retain 92 hereditary peers. I mean, you can go back to say it's more than 200 years since the 1832 Great Reform Bill and Great Reform Act, which took away the hold of the great aristocratic families, opening up the franchise and taking their presence in electoral politics from monopoly to anomaly. But nonetheless, the hereditary principle remains in our Parliament, sometimes said to be a symbol of tradition, sometimes, as the Conservative peers have been aptly demonstrating, obstacles to real reform. And there is, I have to say, a real opportunity for the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster today. He's been protesting several times about his newly found passion for wholesale Lords reform. He's been, I'm glad to see it, you see, there's the real voice of the Conservative Party. And I also, therefore, have heard a lot of protestations that there's no attempt from the Conservative Party to block this. So we will see in the voting lobbies on these... I will come to the Honourable Gentleman in a moment. We will see in the voting lobbies in due course whether they actually seek to block further progress again. And I have to say, when we discuss this, Madam Deputy Speaker, we talk about history and nostalgia, but this, on a real sense, has been used in the upper house to block bills that had a democratic mandate from last year. And I will, on that note, give way to
the Minister for giving way. Just for the completeness of history, it's 115 years since the Labour Party promised to abolish the House of Lords. I think we'll wait another 100 before they even get close to that. And he's absolutely right. The public cannot stand the hereditaries. It's something they're bitterly opposed to. But they're also opposed to prime ministerial patronage. It's almost as unpopular as the House of Lords now. 57 peers have gone into the House of Lords since Labour came to power. The Guardian reported dozens of new ones going in to follow. Is it just that we're going to replace the old nobility with new Labour nobility?
No, absolutely not, because the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is a Member of Parliament who enjoys the confidence of this House. That is entirely different from the situation of having places in the House of Lords on the basis of an accident of birth. I should say, though, just one moment, I will come to the Honourable Gentleman. I should say, though, because, I don't want to just, give the Conservative Party criticism today. That I do appreciate that should the hereditary lords finally be given leave, the title of the most ancient and outdated relic is then awarded to the modern-day Conservative Party, isn't it? So I guess self-preservation is really their motive. But I can tell you, the honourable gentleman spoke about our majority. We will not allow the Conservative Party to block this change. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
If the hereditary principle is so wrong, where does that leave the principle of an hereditary monarchy, which has infinitely more influence than any hereditary peer?
We have a modern constitutional monarchy that enjoys very wide popular support, and it's completely different from. And I mean, I don't think a monarch has blocked an Act of Parliament since Queen Anne in 1714. So I would say the monarchy plays a very different role in our constitution from that of the hereditary peers in the House of Lords. We are, as a government, Madam Deputy Speaker, determined to deliver this reform, to rectify this historic wrong and move us closer to a fairer, more equitable Parliament. So I therefore urge the House to reject Amendments 1 and 8. Now, there are other amendments, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do need to deal with. Now, Amendment 2 would prohibit future unpaid ministers from being eligible for members of the House of Lords. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do understand the strength of feeling expressed in the debate on this amendment in the other place. And I should make clear I am proud of the work that all ministers across government do. I know that ministerial colleagues in the other place work incredibly hard. And whilst we in this House are certainly able, both ministers and shadow ministers, are able to focus on our departmental portfolio, with the honourable exception of the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, who seems to be out a third of the Shadow Cabinet, insofar as I can make out with his various roles, that in fairness carries out his public duties as ever with great dedication. But the situation that the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy finds himself in is quite regular in the House of Lords, with front benches covering a number of different portfolios, and they do so with skill and dedication. I have to say, though, and I understand the motive behind this amendment, but it will do little to address the problem it seeks to resolve. It would not result in all current Lords ministers receiving a salary. It would in fact instead mean that the number of Lords ministers would in the future be reduced. And that is because ministerial salaries are determined by the Ministerial and Other Salaries Act of 1975, which sets a maximum of 109 ministerial posts across both houses, and the House of Commons Disqualification Act of 1975, which limits the number of ministers paid or unpaid in the House of Commons to 95. So the reality is that any meaningful change to the number of ministers or salaries would have to amend that legislation. I should say as well, it's for the Prime Minister of the day to advise the Sovereign on the appointment, dismissal and acceptance of resignation of other ministers in line with those legislative limits. So the amendment would have the effect of placing a further restriction on this prerogative power and reducing the ability of the Prime Minister, indeed any Prime Minister, to choose the best people to serve in their government. Therefore, Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill clearly should not be used as a vehicle to address changes in those acts, and I therefore urge the House to reject Amendment 2. To turn to Amendment 3, this amendment creates a new form of statutory life peerage and seeks to create a two-tier peerage system that distinguishes between the honour of a peerage and membership of the House of Lords. Under this system, individuals could receive the title of a peerage but not be entitled to sit and vote in the House of Lords. I give way to Tom.
Right on, from Committee. I wonder if you could just help me out for a second, because I feel like I might be having some strange alternative reality dream where the hill that the Conservative Party, the modern Conservative Party, prepared to die on is to give unelected peers who are no longer peers the name and title Lord. Like, that's the kind of issue that 2025 is the most important issue of the day. Can he help me? Is that actually... Am I awake or not at this point, please?
On one issue, I can certainly reassure him. He's most definitely awake. This is most definitely reality. Where I'm afraid I will fail is explaining the sense of priorities that is going on over here. And he's quite right to draw attention to it. I'll give away once more. Go.
I genuinely thank the Minister for giving way, and he's a courteous and gentlemanly man for doing so, and I promise this will be my last time. But can I just ask him, what is the difference between the problems to which he is now discussing to what his bill will now enact, which is a hereditary peer not being given membership of the House of Lords, but still being given the title and the privilege of being a peer of this realm?
Well, the difference is quite simply this. What this amendment is doing is trying to create the title as an honour without actually the membership. That's the difference. So the difference, in the exchange I was having earlier around no barrier to life peerages, that is not saying no barrier to the title. The life peerage obviously confers, if it were granted, confers both the title and the participation. So that's what the difference between the two is. Now, on the point about the amendment being unnecessary, as my noble friend Baroness Anderson of Stoke-on-Trent stated in the other place, family connections exist on this side as well. The UK already has an extensive and long-standing honours system. The system recognises and promotes the outstanding contributions that are made by individuals from the length and breadth of the country and all sections of society. Now, to go to the point raised a moment or two ago by the honourable gentleman, of course being appointed a peer is an honour, but it also brings responsibility to contribute to the work of the Second Chamber. Now, the Government also has a manifesto commitment to introduce a participation requirement to ensure all peers contribute to the work of the other place. And I know that's an approach that has received widespread support from peers, and I certainly do not think creating another layer to that system to provide for the statutory creation of non-sitting peers is in keeping with the mood of either House. So I therefore urge the House to reject Amendment 3. I will then just turn to the final issue, which is an issue where the Government, I hope there will be certainly cross-party consensus on this point, which is around resignation by power of attorney. And this is around Amendments 4, 5, 6, 7 and 9, which would allow the House of Lords to set out arrangements for resignation from the other place where a peer lacks capacity, including when someone is acting under a lasting power of attorney. Now, during the passage of the bill in the other place, it became clear that there was considerable support to address in legislation the long-standing concern that members who lack capacity were not able to resign from the House of Lords. And the Government listened and has acted. So following discussions with peers, and it's peers across the House of Lords, the Leader of the House of Lords brought forward these amendments to address this matter. And what they make clear is that a notice to resign from the other place may be given and signed by a person acting on behalf of a peer who lacks capacity, providing it is done in accordance with the standing orders of the House. The amendments relating to resignation would come into force on royal assent to ensure that families who wish to avail themselves of these new arrangements do not have to wait until the end of the parliamentary session to do so. And it's a solution that's received unanimous cross-party support on the other place. It seeks to provide certainty to peers who've raised this issue, and I hope that the Shadow Chancellor will be able to confirm the support for that amendment when he makes some remarks in a moment. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a short and focused bill. It delivers on a manifesto commitment to immediately remove the right of hereditary peers to sit and vote in the House of Lords. It is not personal, nor is it a commitment on the personal contribution hereditary peers have made. The Government is grateful for their service in the other place, and I stress that, again, there are no bars to them returning to life peers if their party leaders wish to nominate them. But the time has now come to deliver this immediate reform so that we can move on to further reform of the other place as set out in our manifesto, delivering on what was promised in July last year. So I therefore urge the House to support the Government's position.
Yeah, yeah.